Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to learn about population ecology. When we see in natural conditions or environments, some populations, be it plant or an animal, they fluctuate greatly while populations of other species are stable. Why does this occur? Why do some species flourish and why do some species struggle to increase their population? To answer this question, we turn to the field of population ecology. It is the study of population in relation to their environment. Population ecology explores how biotic and abiotic factors influence the density, distribution, size, and age structure of populations. A population is a group of individuals of a single species living in the same general area. Members of a population rely on the same resources. They are influenced by similar environmental factors and are likely to interact and breed with one another. Populations are often described by their boundaries and size. Size is nothing but the number of individuals living within those particular areas. That is the boundary. Ecologists usually begin investigating a population by defining boundaries appropriate to the organism under study and to the questions being asked. A population's natural boundaries may be natural ones, or they may be arbitrarily defined by an investigator, like for example, a specific district in Telangana for a study of mango trees. And we should also learn about the demography. It is nothing but the statistical study of population. So population ecology is basically how they move, how they develop, how they reproduce, how they expand, how they come down in their number. And demography is nothing but the statistical study of populations. It allows predictions to be made, like how a population will change in a particular situation. Population dynamics, there are three key features of populations, that is the size, density, and dispersion. As we have already seen, the size is nothing but the number of individuals in an area. Although several species may share a habitat, they each have their own niche. A niche is a very narrow range where a species fits within a habitat. So the number of individuals of a particular population in a given area is called as a size. Now the size of a population can be defined or described by the growth rate. This growth rate is nothing but birth rate, that is natality, minus death rate, that is mortality. That is how many individuals are born versus how many die. So you can say that birth rate minus death rate, that is B minus D, is equal to rate of natural increase, that is R. We'll come to this R for the human population in the last point of our explanation. So when you see this growth rate, you can understand these. If you see this particular diagram, you'll be able to understand how in various areas the population increases, whether it is rapid as in Kenya or slow as in United States or zero growth, that is there is no a change in the growth rate since this time which is given here, that is 1915, okay, before 1915 to 1994. This is a period of study. If you see Kenya, during before 1915s or even till 1949 and 1954, the growth rate is little less. Here you are able to see the age people who are occupying the various levels of strata here. But when you come to 1959 to 1994, you will see that the growth has, growth rate has tremendously increased. You can see the number of increase, that is a percentage of increase in population. So this is a rapid growth of population in a given community, that is Kenya, over a period of few decades. When you see United States, you will see that there is an increase in population from before 1915 to 1994, but there is not such a great difference between the original status and now. Slowly they are increasing. Yes, there is a growth in the population, but it is very, very slow. And if you take Italy, this example here, almost the starting point, that is before 1915, and this particular area where they have stopped the study, that is 1994, you will see that there is almost the same size, that is zero growth in population over a period of few decades in Italy. So these are the three different areas where the population size has increased tremendously, with rapid growth in Kenya, slow growth in United States, and zero growth or decrease in Italy. Now the second feature of population ecology is density and dispersion. Second is density and third one is dispersion. The density of a population is the number of individuals per unit area or volume. For example, the number of mango trees per square kilometer in Hyderabad, that is the district of Telangana, or the number of Escherichia coli bacteria per millimeter in a test tube. This is density, that is the population, that is the number of individuals per unit area or volume. Dispersion is a pattern of spacing among individuals within the boundaries of the population. That is, how are they present? This population, are they evenly distributed or they are randomly distributed? This will be the distribution. So size, density, and dispersion are the three major factors, or three major characteristics of population. Density is usually, as we have seen, the number of individuals which are, number of individuals per unit area or volume. Now this is changed, or the density of a population can be either improved or decreased, increased or decreased, as individuals are added to that particular population or removed from a population. So what is the addition of to the density? That is the births and immigration are the two factors which add individuals to a population, whereas deaths and emigration remove individuals from a population. So additions occur through birth, which we define here to include all forms of reproduction, and immigration, that is nothing but the influx of new individuals from other areas. So when individuals come from other areas, it is called as immigration. So addition to the density could be either through birth or through immigration. And the factors that remove individuals from a population are death, that is mortality, and emigration, that is movement of individuals out of a population and into other location. While birth and death rates influence the density of all population, immigration and emigration also alter the density of many populations. Now, there is an example here, that is the long-term studies of Belding's ground squirrel in the vicinity of Tioga Pass in Sierra Nevada of California showed that some of the squirrels moved nearly 2 kilometers from where they were born. So this long distance movement made them immigrants to other population. In fact, immigrants made up 1 to 8% of the males and 0.7 to 6% of females in the study population. Although these percentages may seem small, such immigration is a meaningful biological exchange between populations over a period of time. So we can measure this density by this particular formula. This is a measurement of population per unit area or unit volume. So population density is equal to number of individuals divided by unit of space. So immigration is movement of individuals into a population. Emigration is movement of individuals out of a population. So there are some factors which are density dependent, that is biotic factors in the environment that have an increasing effect as population size increases. Like suppose the population density increases, then these factors, biotic factors also increase. What are these biofactors, biotic factors? These could be disease, because in the limited area, the population is increasing, so there is always a chance of spreading of easy spread of disease. Then competition, because it is a population, that is, it is a group of individuals of the same species. They need same factors for their growth, reproduction, etc. So as the space is limited and the population is increasing, slowly competition enters into the picture. That is, they fight amongst themselves for the same resources. So here the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest, that comes into the picture. And then parasites. Parasites will be having a field day, because parasites will be having a field day because the population is growing, there is a competition, there is the land or the area that they're occupying is very limited. So because of which the increase in parasites could also be they seen as a density of a particular population increases in a given area. And there are some abiotic factors which are density independent. That is, they are also affecting the population regardless of their density. That is temperature and weather. Now, abiotic factors, these are there, temperature and weather are there. As they fluctuate, they affect the population growth. So, even though they are not affected by the population, their effect on population is very easily seen. So, when we see the density of population, you can understand that there are 4 things which are affecting the population growth. That is immigration, it increases the density. Natality increases the population density. So we are representing it as a positive interaction, whereas mortality removes certain individuals who die from the population, and immigration also removes some amount of individuals from some number of individuals from that area to different area. So next feature is dispersion. Within a population's geographic range, local densities may differ substantially, creating contrasting patterns of dispersion. Dispersion is nothing but the arrangement of these individuals in that particular area. Differences in local density are amongst the most important characteristic for a population ecologist to study, since they provide insight into the environmental associations and also social interactions of individuals in the population. The most common pattern of dispersion is clumped, in which individuals are aggregated in patches. Plants and fungi are often clumped where soil conditions and other environmental factors favor germination and growth. There are some more examples for this clumped growth. Mushrooms, for instance, they grow within or on the top of a rotting log. Insects, salamanders may be clumped under the same log because of higher humidity. Clumping of animals may also be associated with mating behavior, like mayflies, which survive only a day or two as mating adults, often swarm in great numbers, a behavior that increases their chance of mating. Sea stars group together in tide pools where food is readily available and where they can breed successfully. Forming groups may also increase the effectiveness of predation. So, being in group is always good for the animal because it helps them in predation or in defense. For example, a wolf pack is more likely than a single wolf to subdue a moose, and a flock of birds is more likely than a single bird to warn of a potential attack. Second type of dispersion is uniform. A uniform or evenly spaced pattern of dispersion may be a result from direct interaction between individuals in the population. Some plants secrete chemicals that inhibit the germination and growth of nearby individuals that could compete for resources. Animals often exhibit uniform dispersion as a result of antagonistic social interactions such as territoriality, the defense of a bounded physical space against encroachment by other individuals. Uniform patterns are rarer than clumped patterns. Many animals such as sea stars grouped together where food is abundant. Birds nesting on small islands such as the king penguins in the Falkland Islands near the southern tip of South America often exhibit uniform spacing maintained by aggressive interactions between neighbors. The third kind of dispersion is random. Many plants such as dandelions grow from wind-blown seeds that land at random and later germinate. In random dispersion, that is unpredictable spacing, the position of each individual in a population is independent of other individuals. This pattern occurs in the absence of strong attractions or repulsions among individuals or where key physical or chemical factors are relatively constant across a steady area. The plants established by wind-blown seeds such as dandelions may be randomly distributed in a fairly uniform habitat. Random patterns are not as common in nature as one might expect. Most populations show at least a tendency towards clumped distribution. So these are the examples of the three types of distributions that I have just studied. This is clumped. This is the most common type of distribution that you see in nature. You will see that these animals are present in a certain clumps. They're not evenly distributed, and it is very rare that you see single species. So usually they are clumped. Then uniform, they are equally placed from one another because of various reasons like aggressiveness of the neighbors. And then this is random pattern. You will not see these ferns at one particular place as clumped or equally spaced from each other like in uniform, but this is a random distribution. There is no particular pattern here. So in nature, clumped distribution of population is more in existence. Now, demographics are the factors that influence population density and dispersion patterns. That is the ecological needs of a species, structure of environment, and interactions among individuals within the population also influence other characteristics of population. Now, demography is a study of vital statistics of population and how they change over time. Of particular interest to demographers are birth rates and death rates. A useful way to summarize some of the vital statistics of population is to make a life table. So, what is a life table? About some years ago, life insurance first became available, and these companies which started insuring life began to estimate how long on an average people of a given age could be expected to live. So to do this, these demographers developed life tables as age-specific summaries of the survival pattern of population. So now, population ecology, they adapt this approach to study the population in general. The best way to construct a life table is to follow the fate of a cohort. This is nothing but a group of individuals of the same age from birth until all of the individuals are dead. To build the life table, we need to determine the number of individuals that die in each group and to calculate the proportion of the cohort surviving from one age class to the next. Now, from these life tables, we have come across to survival curves. A graphic method of representing some data of some of the data in the life table is a survivorship curve. So, some part of the life table, if it is represented in a graphic method, that is called as a survivorship curve. It is a plot of the proportion or numbers in a cohort still alive at each age. Though diverse, survivorship curves can be classified into three general categories. The first one is type 1 curve is flat at the beginning, reflecting low death rates during early and middle age, then drops steeply as death rates increase among the older age groups. Many large mammals, including humans, that produce few offspring but provide them with good care exhibit this kind of curve. In contrast, a type 3 curve drops sharply at the start, reflecting very high death rates for the young, but flattens out as death rates decline for those few individuals that survive the early period of die-off. This type of curve is usually associated with organisms that produce very large number of offspring that provide little or no care, such as long-lived plants, many fishes, most marine invertebrates. Example, an oyster. It may release millions of eggs, but most larvae hatched from fertilized eggs die from predation or the causes. Those few offspring that survive long enough to attach to a suitable substrate and begin growing a hard shell tend to survive for a relatively long time. Type 2 curves are intermediate with a constant death rate over the organism's lifespan. This kind of survivorship curves occur in buildings, ground squirrels, and some other rodents, various invertebrates, some lizards, and some annual plants. So, many species fall somewhere between these three basic types of survivorship or show more complex pattern. In birds, mortality is often high amongst the youngest individuals as in type 3, but fairly constant among adults as in type 2 curve. Some invertebrates such as crab may show a stair-stepped curve with brief periods of increased mortality during moults, followed by periods of lower mortality when their protective exoskeleton is hard. In populations not experiencing immigration or emigration, survivorship is one of the two key factors determining changes in population size. The other key factor determining population trend is reproductive rate. How do populations grow? Idealized models describe two kinds of population growth, exponential growth and logistic growth. Exponential growth. We usually see that when a population whose numbers all have access to abundant food and are free to reproduce at their physiological capacity, population increases under these ideal conditions is called as exponential population growth. So ideal conditions are there, that is abundant food is there, everybody can access it, reproduction is also free, that is it is free up to their physiological capacity. In these ideal conditions, population grows exponentially. It is also known as geometric population growth. The size of a population that is growing exponentially increases at a constant rate, resulting eventually in a J-shaped growth curve when population size is plotted over time. Populations of all species have the potential to expand greatly when resources are abundant. To appreciate this, consider a bacterium that can reproduce by fission every 20 minutes under ideal laboratory conditions. There would be 2 after 20, 4 after 40, 8 after 60. If reproduction continued at this rate for a day and a half without mortality, there would be enough bacteria to form a layer 30 centimeter deep over the entire globe. At the other extreme, an elephant may produce only 6 offspring in a 100-year lifespan. Still, Charles Darwin once estimated that descendants of a single pair of mating elephants would number 19 million within only 750 years. Darwin's estimate may not have been precisely correct, but such analysis led him to recognize the tremendous capacity for growth in all populations. Similarly, in mango plants also, you can see that millions of flowers are given in one particular mango plant, but all of them are not pollinated. Even if lakhs of them are pollinated, only few thousands grow into the small fruit. Then out of these thousands, maybe only few hundreds will mature to the later phases of the fruit growth. So, although unlimited growth growth does not occur for long in nature, studying population growth in an ideal unlimited environment reveals how fast a population is capable of growing and the conditions under which rapid growth might actually occur. So, this is the we have just now discussed about the bacteria, how they are increasing. over a period of time, we said that within 1.5 days, the entire earth could be covered with bacteria with 3 centimeters deep by these bacteria. Let us now come to the second type of growth, that is logistic growth. The exponential growth model assumes that resources are unlimited, which is rarely the case in the real world. Resources are not unlimited. As population density increases, each individual has access to fewer resources. Ultimately, there is a limit to the number of individuals that can occupy a habitat. So, ecologists define carrying capacity, symbolized by K, as a maximum population size that a particular environment can sustain. So, this is symbolized by K. This is carrying capacity. Carrying capacity varies over space and time with the abundance of limiting resources. Energy, shelter, refuge from predators, nutrient availability, water, and suitable nesting sites can all be limiting factors. For example, the carrying capacity for bats may be high in a habitat with abundant flying insects and roosting sites, but lower where there is abundant food but fewer suitable shelters. Crowding and resource limitation can have a profound effect on population growth rate. If individuals cannot obtain sufficient resources to reproduce, the per capita birth rate will decline. If they cannot consume enough energy to maintain themselves, or if the disease or parasitism increases with density, the per capita death rate may increase. A decrease in birth rate or an increase in death rate results in a lower per capita rate of increase. This is given as R. So this is a logistic growth curve where you will see that once the population starts increasing, it goes to a certain area where the resources becomes limited, and here the population, the growth starts attaining an equilibrium. Here the population will be only in that number or in that density that the particular environment can support. So what are the factors which limit the growth rate? Declining birth rate or increasing death rate are caused by several factors, including limited food supply, then buildup of toxic waste, then increased disease and predation. So that is why we see the booms and busts. Now, if you see the population of hare with that of the lynx, lynx is depicted in red and hare is depicted in black. Now, as the hare population increases, you also have a corresponding lynx population increase, because of which this snow hare will be controlled. So it has come down. Again, once it comes down automatically, because lynx is dependent on snow hare for its food, even the lynx population has come down. So here for the lynx, limited food supply has stopped its growth. Here for the hare, the predation by the lynx has stopped its growth. So these are called as booms and busts. Now there are some strategies followed by various kinds of populations. These are called as reproductive strategies. There are R strategies and K strategies. R strategies have, these populations have short lifespan, small body size, they can reproduce very quickly, have many young but little parental care. Example, cockroaches, weeds, bacteria. On the other hand, K strategies have long lifespan, large body size, reproduce very slowly, have few young but provides parental care. Examples, humans and animals. Now, the age distribution is another characteristic of under study. That is the distribution of males and females in each age group of a population. It is used to predict future population growth, because unless there is a proper female population, naturally the reproduction will not be occurring. And unless there is a male population, there is no, even then there is no reproduction which is occurring in the female population. So the distribution of males and females is very, very important, where you can understand that each group, the future population growth is predicted, or that can be predicted by the distribution of male and female here. You can see that here there is a baby boom. In the first case, that is 1960s, there is a baby boom. And here you can see that aged 10 and above, just below 20, this population was very, very high. The age group from 20 to 40, they were varying in numbers, but the age groups from 40 to 80, slowly there is a decrease in them. You can see that 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80 years, male and female slowly decline. Now, the same thing in 1980, if you see, the baby boom has crossed because they have gone 20 years ahead. The baby boom has come to the 20 and 30 age group. Here you will see by this time, because they have realized that the resources could be little less, the children below the age group of 15 years is less. But the same thing continues. The old, that is 30 to 80, slowly decreased in numbers, male and female. When you come to female and male ratios in 2000 till 2000, from 1920 to 2000, 1980 to 2000, you will see that the baby boomers have gone to 40 and 50 years of 1960. Now these baby boomers children had again come to the reproductive age. Again you see there is a narrowing down from the age groups of 50 to 80. But here it has stabilized. By the time we come to 2020, that is the present year, you can see that even the children of the baby boomers have also become 40 years old. So you have a very big population of 60 and 70 year age group here. Now, if you compare in 1960, there was very, very little here. But here you can see slowly it is expanding. So we can predict the future, how it could be in 2040, because there is another baby boomer which is going to come here at the bottom. So you have almost a pillar-like strong flattened curves going towards a 80 years, 70 and 80 age group also. So just this is what is summarized here. That is the human population growth. It shows a J curve. Growth rate grows at a rate of about 80 million yearly. The R, that is per capita increase in growth, that is 1.3%, which is very, very high. Now, why does not the environment stopping the increase of human beings? Because they are altering their environment. Because of technological advances, people are living in more luxury. Cultural revolution, agricultural revolution, industrial and medical revolution, especially the medical revolution, all these have increased the lifespan of common man today. They doubled 3 times in the last 3 centuries itself. They have doubled about 6.1 billion and may reach 9.3 billion by the year 2050. Because of the improved health and technology, there is a lower death rate now. You can see this in this particular graph. There is absolutely no increase till 1000 BC. From 1000 BC to 1000 AD, there is a little bit of increase. 1000 AD to 2000, there is some more. There is an increase. But if you see from 2000, if you see from the last few years, that is 1980s, 1960s to 2000, you see there is an exponential growth of human population in the size, that is billions, in billions. The size has grown in billions. You can see this in the last few years of the 20th century, there is a huge increase in the population. So if this trend continues, I think the present we all know that the studies show that the resources become very, very, very limiting, and then there will be survival. There is a struggle for existence, and only the fittest will be able to survive. Or there is a incidence of disease, parasitism, competition. A lot of all these negative interactions will play a major role in controlling the population of human beings. Thank you.